Hey everybody, welcome back to Final Resonance TV and episode number 4 of Van Halen Stories. Today is the episode all about the Smithsonian Institution on 2/12/2015. My guest with me tonight is Vince Schmidt, who is from, you're from, Jersey?
I live in New Jersey. I'm originally from St. Louis. But yeah, I live in New Jersey now, yes.
Okay. So Vince and I happen to be in line together at the Smithsonian. I think we sit in line together, 3 hours? Forever, right? So we got to talking, and we were talking all about Van Halen stuff. And one of the things I want to ask you, man, because I don't know whether we talked about it or not, but how did you find out about this thing, and then how did you end up there?
The whole reason I ended up understanding anything about that night was I was asked if I wanted to go by a mutual friend of myself and Edward Van Halen, a producer out in LA who is actually a friend of mine through tennis, of all things. He was a fan of tennis, and I used to be a tennis player. And he said, "Hey, if you want to go to this, I can get you in." I'm like, "Sounds great." So he asked me if I wanted to go. He actually was in a band, Adrian Gurwitz. I don't know if you know the name Adrian Gurwitz. And Adrian, he played with Ginger Baker and a bunch of people. Well, he's a producer now. Okay. And he offered me the opportunity to go and kind of open my eyes to it. And he's the one that has gotten me to 5150, et cetera. So I said, yeah, of course. And at the time I was living in West Virginia. So it was just, it was like 2-hour drive or something to go. So I went and that's how I got in. It was great. It was an amazing night.
Yeah. So we end up in line together, and I'm from Alabama. I flew in, of course. I found out about it on the Van Halen news desk, and it was really weird how the tickets were set up because you had to go to some external site to try to get them, and
like Piccolo or something.
It was really weird. I don't know if you did that, but it was weird to try to find them, and it took me a while to find them, actually, and then to secure them and all that. And then right before I went, they sent me a message saying they couldn't honor my ticket, saying they, for some reason.
You already got
and then right behind that message was another message saying, "Oh, we messed up. You're still good to go."
Divine Providence.
Right? I'm like, whatever. I'm there. Right? I already bought my plane ticket by the time I got that message, so it was kind of crazy, but. Yeah, so we get there, we're waiting around, and then, what I guess I didn't realize, we were kind of around the corner from the line. We were in the front.
Right.
I didn't, I don't know whether you walked around the corner to see how long the line was. Did you?
It was long.
Okay. And I was thinking, when we got in there.
But I think there's only like 400 people in the whole auditorium, wasn't it?
Right, but half of it was full, right, when we went in, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I was going to say, because when we got in the door, it seemed like they already had half the seats filled.
I was probably in row, I don't know where you were sitting. I was on the far side by the wall, on the left side, on Eddie's side, which is ironic because he usually plays on the right side. Right. I was on the left side near the wall, and I was probably 10 rows up from the first, I was 10 rows deep. Okay. I don't know if I think you were maybe more centered, but back further.
Yeah, I was back a little further. Yeah. I was back a little bit further on the left.
I think what happened was those original people were either the people that produced the event.
Yeah.
Some of them were there. Mm-hmm. I know there were some Smithsonian folks there, and I also know there were some guests of Ed there. I mean, Alex was there, Wolf was there. There was a lot of people that went in beforehand. I guess I don't know whether they did a check or whether it was just a meet and greet or a question and answer. I never asked them, but I know there were some people there that had filled, at least the reason I got so low is because I was on the side. I think if you wanted in the center, it was kind of like pushed back a little bit.
Right. I think, when Brad, Tolinski, and Chris get on here, we'll be able to find out what happened before we were there, because they were probably in that whole.
Yeah, no, I was with you the whole time in line.
Right, that preset.
But that line went back around the corner and went quite a ways.
So how many people do you think that were on that ticket list? In a couple hundred, maybe, or 100?
I think 400, probably 400 or 500. I don't know how many the room held, but it was fun.
So you'd say about 200 fans were on in the line.
Yeah, right? At least.
That's what I was thinking. I was trying to. Not a lot of people have talked about this, but I think that when we got in there and realized half the room was full with dignitaries or whatever. Mm-hmm. That they had still a very low number of folks that were going to be able to come in through ticketing like we did.
Yeah.
So I was surprised that it was that small, actually, when I got there. And then, I guess your reflections on his conversation and that. I know we've all probably watched it online on the Smithsonian, the interview on the video on YouTube. I think it's got 8.5 million views now. But who would have known? Being there, I didn't really think that it was going to be put out there and be that big. I guess maybe, I don't know. Maybe it should have figured that.
Well, I mean, all the interviews he ever did, whether it be the one with Costas that was, part of a show, whether it was on MTV and the backstage interviews they do or the whatever, he never really had a long form interview. I mean, talking about, the Netherlands to today, or to Pasadena, at least, there wasn't really a long form video interview with him. So to me, I mean, it's kind of the quintessential, if you're going to learn about who he was and where he was from and what kind of made him tick. That video was pretty darn good about it.
It was, and Brad and I have been talking, and he mentioned it being one of Eddie's greatest nights, is how he put it. And from a standpoint of being in a good place personally, and then of course I think he really relished the idea of being part of the Smithsonian.
Well, that not only that, I mean, it's where a Stradivarius is now. There's a Van Halen guitar, so that's kind of cool. And he mentioned that. Yeah. But also we got a chance to talk about his dad. Got to share it with his son. He got to share it with his brother. I mean, right. This isn't just another concert. You know what I'm saying? It was truly something. I think anytime you take somebody and recognize them outside of where they expect to be recognized, adds to the wow, this is pretty important. I mean, if I was walking down the street and recognized not for being your career, but maybe what you like to think you were good at, or what you used to do, or when you were a kid you were great at this or that. So, hey, weren't you the kid who did? Yeah, I was. That makes you feel pretty good,
right?
And I think in this case, this is a historic thing. This is a museum thing. This is a Washington D.C. capital of the capital of the United States thing. Any paradigm you want to look at it through, any direction you want to check it. It was a pretty big night for him, I think. I think you're right. I think it was a pretty big night for him all the way around. Especially getting to be able to talk about his dad. His dad, that was the part that, for me, it really kind of moved me, because right about that time I lost my father. So I appreciated the fact that his dad not only was important to him because he was his dad, but also because he played such an important role in who he became.
Right. And there's some new revelations in the Eruption book, what I can't say, but about his father. Mm-hmm. And more detail that goes back to the beginning, where some of the stories we know, the $15 and the piano kind of stories. Right. There's much more filled in this book. Sure. It's going to be pretty cool. Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it when you finally get your hands on it and be able to digest some of these new. It's filled in a lot of the holes that we didn't know about. So it's really cool in that way. So. The speech itself, I mean, you said that the father, talking about his father, was important to you at that particular time. I thought the same thing. He said he wanted to play, if he could play with somebody that he. Yeah,
you think he'd name Clapton, or he'd name Jimi Hendrix, or he'd name some amazing band that he would want to sit in with. No, he'd want to play with his dad. And now his dad with Wolfgang would be. I mean, that would be the best. I would think, because obviously Wolfgang talks about playing with his dad, and he talks about playing with Wolfgang all the time. So. Now you add, Jan into the mix as well. That's a trio I'd like to see.
Yeah, right. You can hear. I mean, I don't know how much of the music stuff that you're into, but like when his dad played on Diver Down, he played, mm-hmm. and you can hear Eddie's guitar phrasing and his dad's phrasing. You can definitely hear that DNA of his style inside of his father's playing, which is really kind of cool to hear. Yeah, that was a great opportunity for all of us, and then they sprung it on us at the end. I guess you already knew that he was going to greet, so they sprung it on the rest of us who didn't know at the end of the thing that he was going to greet. And it was kind of a cool greet, because it was more like a receiving line than a tabled thing. We got to go stand with him and talk to him for a second, get a photo and everything. It was very informal. Is what I thought, how I felt like.
It was well policed. It was well managed. But it was still genuine. It wasn't an antiseptic, sterile kind of environment where, okay, here's your book. Okay, here's your book. Okay, here's your book. I mean, it was like, hey, come here, we'll talk. What's going on? You got a chance to say, a lot of people said thank you. I heard that. A lot of people said thank you for what? Well, thanks for making my life this, or thanks for getting me through a rough time, or thanks for inspiring me to play guitar, or thanks for showing me a different way, or whatever they wanted to thank him for. It was all personal. Obviously, there was 200 people there who could do it, but. And I was watching him very carefully, You don't get a lot of chances to hear people and him interact. And, you know, he appreciated that. He was really down with what people were saying. I mean, I don't say he was physically moved, but I mean, you could tell, oh, that's cool. You know, that's great. You know, and here, let's take a picture. You know, I mean, he was all in. I mean, it wasn't a deal he was being paid for. It wasn't a deal he had to do contractually. He was there. He wanted to be there, and it showed.
Yeah. I think you're right. You know, that in the past, whenever, you know, Eddie's well known for his anxiety and some of the issues he's had over the years. But I felt like, you know, in this particular moment, maybe because it was smaller, maybe because it was expected, that he was pretty comfortable. Mm-hmm. You know, and
I think a lot of the people that were there, people he probably knew or recognized. You know, the gentleman from the inside you were talking about, you know, he knows that guy. I mean, that's not somebody that, you know, coming up to him at the grocery store. You know, I mean, they were there, they were vetted, they were cleared. That, you know, and it was a safe environment for him to be who he was.
Right. And like I said, when we were able to walk up to him, and it was very informal. It just felt much more personal.
Yeah. It wasn't like you met him on the street or met him at a grocery store, but it was also not, you know, stand behind the rope and wave or pay $5 to get your 30 seconds with him. I mean, it was really, it was as good as it could possibly be given the circumstances, and the circumstances were positive. So it was really good.
Yeah, I love that. And I was the same way, you know, standing in line waiting to talk to him finally, you know, after 30 years, like a lot of people. I had a chance to meet him at one point, or at least shake his hand, and I blew it because I was 21 years old and too scared to even touch this man. So to finally do that, I did exactly what you said that most people did. I just thanked him for his influence and for what he'd done for me, and, you know, the life that he inspired me to follow my career as a musician. But a lot of people, I think, you know, he inspired. This is something that Eddie did different, I think, is that he inspired a lot of people in a lot of different ways. You know, he was more of a cultural impact than most guitar players. You know, I think, you know, obviously being married to Valerie Bertinelli helped him have a wider spread. You had the Beat It thing where he, again, much more widely known as a guitar player. I think in the conscience of most people, and you said you're from the tennis background, you know, with McEnroe, who you said was one of your friends.
Right.
They were close. I think John played, right?
Mm-hmm. There's a great Kramer commercial or a Kramer ad.
Yeah.
It has John playing a guitar, lefty. Yeah. And has Edward playing one of John's rackets. You know, like goofing off like he's air guitar in the Dunlop tennis racket. It's a cute ad.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, they were friends. In fact, I mean, you know the story, I'm sure. There's been widespread speculation that Patty Smythe was going to take the place of David when David left, and ultimately, you know, she was pregnant with John's child, and that didn't happen. You know, and John knew Eddie, and Eddie knew Patty, and Patty knew Eddie. I mean, it's you know, these worlds collide a lot. I mean, when you're at a certain level, there's certain camaraderie around it that it's kind of cool. So, you know, that's a way you can meet and get into that world, is if you yourself are at a certain level. You know, they want to commingle.
So when they're commingling, though, and that the effect is that Eddie gets known in at least wider circles of people that are not necessarily musician folks, and that again, you know, increases his impact. And you know, when he passed, you just saw this huge outpouring that I didn't even expect that big of. I mean, I expected a big outpouring, but it went on for a while.
Well, I'll give you an example maybe that'll put what you're saying into perspective.
Okay.
You know, everything that Edward was to guitars, Neil Peart was to drums.
Sure.
You know, I mean, he was cutting edge. He was an innovator, yada, yada, yada. Now, again, we're not speaking of, I'm sure in Canada it was more than in the United States. But everybody said, oh, Neil Peart passed, and he was great. And Neil Peart passed, and Rush is awesome. And Neil Peart passed, and wow, he was really amazing. And I remember seeing him in 76 in whatever city it was or whatever. And that, but you know, that too shall pass, you know, and Edward hasn't. You know, Edward still, they're still talking about it. Now, granted, maybe I'm on the websites and maybe I'm in the world that I'm noticing it more because I'm more of a Van Halen fan than a Rush fan. But still, I mean, Neil was an incredible gift. Dusty Hill was a great bass player. You know, he sold millions of records and was a wonderful person by all accounts. But, you know, 4 days later, next up, you know, I mean, it wasn't the seismic shift that was also on, you know, NBC nightly news, you know, Edward was.
Yeah. He was on almost every news program that covered that.
You can do the math on it.
And they're doing, you know, they're working on these new things in Pasadena to honor him locally, which is cool, and I hope they get that done. But yeah, his impact was incredible. Now, your pre-story with him, as you mentioned in the beginning of this, that you went to 5150, you know, and I mean, you've talked about it, but can you share that story from how it started to what happened?
Well, again, I wasn't an outsider, so to speak, because of my relationship in tennis. I mean, I was known, if you will, and to some degree, not a major superstar by any means, but I knew people who were, and so I mean, I ran in certain circles and had the opportunity to meet people through that, meet Edward through that, and then, as I told you, my producer friend, I was out in LA for a tennis event, a tennis charity event, and he said, "Hey, I'm going up to 5150. You want to come?" And actually, he said, "I've got a he's doing some work tonight on some recordings. You want to come?" And not having anything to do in LA because I was there for a different type of event altogether, I said, "Yeah, I'll show up." And so he gives me the address, and I thought, "Okay, whatever." I didn't think of it. And as I drove in, I realized all of a sudden, uh-oh. He knew of my passion. He knew of my affinity for all things Van Halen. So I got to the not the front door, which goes to the house, but around the back is another box, and the gates open. When I hit the button, and I drove in, and I saw a car hauler, a huge car hauler, like could hold more than one or two cars, and on the side of it had Lamborghini, and I was like, I know where I'm at. I get this. So I drove up, and I was met you know, when I got there, and it does look like a garage. I'll be honest with you. It does look like a big garage.
Right.
And across, you know, from the door across the driveway to the grass going down to the pool is what you've seen, I'm sure, which is the big patch of Frankenstein, red, white, black all over. There was a golf cart that way. That was kind of cool. He had a bunch of cars and crazy looking cars and like a cab over pickup truck that was European and a Mini Cooper and just crazy, weird things. I didn't see the Lamborghini Mirai. I didn't see it that night, but I had a chance and I went in, and the gentleman I was with, the producer, said, you know, please don't take pictures or record. I said, I'm lucky to be alive, man. I'm not saying they're doing anything. So I went in, and it had a certain odor to it. It's obviously a working room. It's not a museum by any means. Mm-hmm. Couches that were obviously well worn and a bottle or two here and there and a cigarette butt here and there. But then there's a spot where he has this, I guess, collection, if you will, of guitars just hanging and a stack of Frank bodies. And I'm like, you know, everybody thinks that the one you have behind you is the one, right? Or the one behind you that was red, if it was red, was the one, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know whether they were common gifts, but I know Hard Rock Cafe's got a bunch of them, and I don't think they all saw the stage, if you know what I'm saying. So,
sure.
I mean, I think he got into the business of I shouldn't say the business. I think he got into the habit of having them available to, you know, charities or whatever to give away or give out. Like a surprising amount of necks, just guitar necks laying around and sitting around, and weird stuff that was also striped, you know, that was there. But all of that aside, then he had a Flying V, and I knew exactly what that was. I am not a guitarist, but I know about them and I respect them. I can't play to save my life, but just things that I recognize, like, you know, he had a mandolin, he had a cello, he had things that you're like, I bet you that guy could play that too. You know, he's that kind of, you know, I bet you that guy can even do that, you know? So it was one of those kind of moments. And excuse me. And just this, I mean, and it was clear it was a working room that I was in. I mean, they had a workbench with soldering irons and tools and toys and wiring and oscillating machines and all kinds of just stuff, you know, and everywhere you look, there was soundproofing, you know, there was that foamy egg carton-y looking stuff on walls and carpet. And I mean, it was clear that this was, you know, you see pictures of like studios like Abbey Road Studio, or you see pictures of Electric Lady Studios in New York or wherever, and they all look very, you know, very professional and things that go up and things that go down and things that turn and things that turn and have lights and this and that. And this looked like it almost looked like Frankenstein again, like wires hanging and tape doing things. And again, you probably as musician would say, well, that does this and that does this. I'm looking at it and saying, this is a damn mess. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Right.
And tapes upon these big boxes of tapes just sit, and you were thinking, what's in there? I wonder what amazing song is in that one, or I wonder what notes are being played on that box or whatever. And it was just, but it wasn't, it was dark. It was kind of cavernous. It was a pretty cool thing. But again, it wasn't this like high end West Hollywood music studio as I perceived them to be. It was much more of a, this was his, everybody talks about man caves. This was man cave times 10, it was man cave extraordinaire.
Right. Yeah. The guys in the Eruption book, Brad and Chris, they kind of equate this studio to an extension of his bedroom when he was a child. Like, this is just the place where he went to do his thing. Yeah, I can't say that for sure, certain, but I can see why people would say, I'm sure he slept there at least one night. Yeah, exactly. Right. So you get in there, and what are they doing when you're there?
My guy was working on music and doing whatever. I don't even, I wasn't so conscious of that, because all of a sudden you see the guy walk in and he's got a guitar under his neck at all times. Just walking around, talking and shaking hands and doing what he's doing and talking to questions and asking about this and moving those various switches and dials and things he was doing, which I'm sure is very important for music. I don't understand it, but the whole time he's got a guitar, and I'm thinking he's going to go in that room and they're going to record him. He's like doodling and noodling right there, writing stuff down and noodling and writing stuff down, like at the board, at the board where the control is. He's not hanging out in like where all the microphones and all the sound equipment is. He's right there just doing stuff. It was pretty cool to see him just, this far away, and he was very kind. Hey, Schmidt, what's going on? And I heard you were coming up tonight. That's cool. Whatever's going on. And what questions do you have? Or what do you think of the place? He was just, small talk, nothing real deep. And I'll tell you the funniest story of all, though. It was hilarious. There's two things. One is my son, who was supposed to be with me at the tennis event and is obviously been raised on Van Halen. I didn't tell him that that this was going to happen, although I was kind of under the hopes and prayers, because I knew that my producer friend was going up there a bunch, that maybe I would have a chance to at least say hi or whatever. Right. And if my son was there, obviously I would have taken him with me. Well, my son's a pretty smart kid, and he's not a musician either. And my niece, his cousin, said when he reached a certain age, she would take him to space camp in Huntsville, Alabama.
Oh yeah, here in town.
And I'll be damned if he didn't choose that over going to LA, because he'd been to LA a bunch, so he didn't need to go there. So he went to space camp. So actually, I said something to the effect of, "Oh, I wish my son Gus was been here. That would have been cool. He would have loved to have actually met you, because I had met him a couple times, but Gus had never met him." And da. And he goes, why isn't he here? Where is he? Or he says something to the effect of, where is he? I said, well, he chose space camp. He's like, what? Space camp? Are you kidding me? So I actually pulled out my phone at this point, turned it on, because I wasn't on. And I said, and he goes, give me your phone. So I did. Hey, August, I heard you went to band camp. Well, this is Eddie Van Halen. I'm sorry to miss you. And we like totally, geeked up on my kid. And Gus goes, I can't believe you did that. I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, no, that wasn't me. That was actually Edward. And he's like, are you kidding? You actually got to go? I'm like, I told you. You should have been. It was pretty fun. So he had a good sense of humor about it. Yeah.
That is a good story, and a good way to tie in my hometown.
Oh, you're from Huntsville?
Yes.
I knew you were in Alabama. I didn't know it was Huntsville. I thought you were south of there.
Well, that's my hometown. Yeah, this is our town. So yeah, Space Camp's it's our biggest, attraction.
Yeah, it's your Disney World. Yeah,
it is, and that's amazing. That's an amazing story. So you're hanging out with him, and then he gives you a few things.
Yeah, he got a couple of gifts, which was very nice. I didn't expect that, obviously. But one of the funniest things was after a while, he kind of, I wasn't saying much, just answering the questions he asked me. And I wasn't saying, what are you doing there? What are you doing here? Because I'm not a musician. I don't know what he's doing there. And I wouldn't even know if he gave me the answer. I wouldn't know if he was lying to me or not. If he said, I'm like, hey, what's that chord? He said, it's a D chord. I'm like, okay, whatever. I wouldn't know the damn difference. Right. So we were just goofing. And finally he goes, you're not, he said something, somehow or another, it came up like, I wasn't a tourist, or I wasn't a fanboy, and I said, it was kind of what he implied. And I kind of gave it back to him. I said, well, I've seen everything you've ever done. I just kind of blew him off, like as much as you can blow off Edward Van Halen. He's like, I think everybody who comes there must say, hey, play Eruption, right? And I didn't do that. I was just kind of enjoying the space and minding my own business and kind of just being a fly on the wall, watching things happen around me. Because they were doing business, right? They were making their music and recording or whatever and demoing and mixing or what. I don't know what all they were doing. And I kind of, like I said, I just kind of acted like I was too cool for the room and said, well, I've seen everything you've done, and I've seen you live so many times. He goes, really? I said, I know what I would like to see you do because I've never seen you do this live. And he goes, what? And I said, you played it for the album. I know you played it live in LA. And I think you played it live maybe in Houston or Dallas, but I've never seen live Beat It.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, well, I don't think I played it in 25 years or 30, whatever he said. And right there, I'm standing from here to the computer away from his hands. He goes, nah, 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 nah. And I'm like, and he played Beat It note for note. I'm sure it wasn't perfect, but to me it was, right? He would probably say he had 3 mistakes. I would never have known the difference. Right. And I'm like, and he just doodled it out. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And what do you say? What right. Can you possibly do when he does something that arguably is the most heard guitar bit in the history of guitars, right? It's on Beat It, which is on Thriller, which is the biggest selling album of all time. And so it's arguably the most recorded and listened to and produced piece of a musical, riffs in the history of riffing. Right. And the guy played it, a foot and a half away from my eyes. And I'm like, yep, that would be that.
That's pretty cool, man. Because you're right. You couldn't have seen that on any Van Halen tour.
No, you weren't going to see it on the Van Halen show. And I didn't go to a Michael Jackson show. And even if he did, he would have had, somebody else playing it. He had, all kinds of guitar players in his troupe. So sure. I wouldn't have seen that. And it was pretty ridiculous. I mean, just to see it and have him do that, that close and to be able to, I mean, if I said to you, and I know, Jeff, you play all over the South every day, you're playing guitar somewhere. Yep. If I said, and you've heard Beat It 100 times and you've probably even tried to play it. If I said, play it, you give it a go and it would probably sound amazing to me, but you would have to work at it. And if I said, I want it perfect, you'd say, give me a day and I'll be right back to you. Right. He said, now again, maybe he plays it at night and he doesn't tell anybody, but he said he hadn't played it in 25 to 30 years. Right there. And you're like, oh my God, he just turned that one out. Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, he's
and it's not like it's a piece he plays all the time. Right. He hasn't played it that long. And even when he did play it, he played it that night when he recorded it with Quincy Jones. Mm-hmm. He played it maybe in practice for the show in LA and maybe in practice for the show in Dallas or Houston, wherever that third show was. Mm-hmm. Short of that, it's not like he's noodling on that all the time as a warm up,
Mm-hmm. Well, that's cool. So what point does he give you these gifts? And what is it? How's that happen? He just go, here you go, take these with you when you leave.
He said I said something to the effect of, how many guitars does the guy need? And his response is, how many tennis rackets do you have? Right. Oh, and I was like, good point. Yeah. Right. Cause I mean, I've got hundreds of tennis rackets because, this is from this player, this is a guy I coached, or this one I cracked at a special tournament, or what. I mean, I got plus the ones I use, right? So I got tennis rackets galore. And he said, "Why, you need one?" I said, "Well, I said something like, how many guitars does a player need?" And he goes, "How many tennis rackets do you have?" I said, "Yeah, but I use all mine." He goes, "You don't have a guitar?" I said, he goes, "You want one?" I'm like, wow, amazing. So he threw me a Wolf, and it was awesome. And it was one that he had used, and it wasn't brand new. It didn't have a tag on it or anything. It was one he had played. It was chipped up a little bit. So I'm assuming it was him playing it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it was Michael playing it. Maybe it was Sam. I don't know who played it, but it came from him, and it was at 5150, and it was a Wolfgang. So I'm assuming it was probably one he played. Right. He played it that night and showed me that it worked. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. And he gave that to me. And then, I ended up getting a box for not a box. So what do you call it? Case for it and so forth.
Yeah.
Then, he goes, oh, make sure you get here. And he, gave me a strap that was a Wolfgang strap. And he said, he took a handful of picks and threw them in. He goes, now you can go learn how to play guitar. And I thought, yeah, like I'm going to use the one he gave me. Come on, get out of here.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
So then at the Smithsonian, because I knew I wasn't a player and because I knew I wouldn't play the guitar, I took it back to him. And then prior to the interview that happened, that they taped and showed, I actually caught Wolf's eyes and I said, hey man, come here. I got to talk to you. And I had met him in passing. He doesn't know me, but he knew me. You know what I'm saying? It was one of those guys, like, he recognized who I was, but it's not like he comes over for spaghetti dinners on Sunday night. Mm-hmm. And I said, I got a question, man. Can you help me out? I got something your dad gave me. I'd like to give it back and get it signed if you think you could. Well, I don't know if he's going to sign or whatever. I said, that's cool. Whatever, man. I appreciate it. He goes, catch me after this. He didn't say show, but catch me after tonight. I said, okay. So as we were walking out, I kind of gave him and he's like, yeah, come on. So I did. And I had to wait a little bit because he had other people there and we're talking and he was interviewing her, talking with her, whatever. And then he's like, hey, Schmidt, come on over here. So I came over there and he goes, what do you got for me? I said, well, this is what you gave me. And he, oh, yeah. And he was very nice and signed it for me. And he took a picture with signing it and he took a picture of holding it up or whatever. And I was smart enough to bring a new Sharpie so I didn't have to get a bad one or borrow one. I had it ready to go and had it in the case. So it was real easy and he did it. He was very kind to me.
So this was after he walked out of the main room. After that,
it was there was like a place where they had a few munchies and so forth. I guess I would call it a green room if it was a TV show or something.
Sure.
And it was there, and Janie was there, Wolf was there, Alex was there, and they were all very kind. And they recognized the fact that I wasn't, I wasn't trying to be a fanboy. Oh my God, I wasn't doing that. I was like, hey man, if you gave me this, and they recognized that that was his. So obviously I wasn't bringing him a Fender Squire. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
right. So this goes to the story we were talking about before we actually went on with this, is that there's that famous video that went around after his passing about keep playing, man, keep playing.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to come get you or come find you, whatever he said. Right. Right. So you were back there and you were filming that. And so were a few other people, is what you said.
Yeah, I was there, and I said I was I guess it was at the point where we were getting ready to do what we had to do and get out of there or whatever. And I was getting ready to say goodbye, or I'll catch you later, or I hope to see you soon, or whatever it was. And somebody, there was 2 or 3 of us there, and everybody's filming the whole time. And I say, hey, I'm gonna get your picture or something. And the question was asked, hey, where you headed or what's going on next? And somebody said, never stop playing or never stop dying. And he looked at me and he goes, just keep playing, man. Just keep playing. Because we always talked about how I would love to be a player. How I'd love to come down and hang out with you for a weekend and learn something, because learn how to play. Because I have a passion for it. If I ever retire from my job and stop playing tennis and stop doing what I do for a living, I would love to, take 6 months and learn a chord, and learn how to play that chord and play that chord till I die. Right. And if I learned 2, that'd be even better. Right. But I was joking about it. And he said something, he said something about how you play the guitar. How's it coming? I said, well, I've tried to play it and I can play notes, Ed, but I can't play music. And then he said, keep practicing, keep playing. I'll come after you. So that's how it kind of came to pass.
Wow, that's that's crazy, man. Because that thing went pretty viral. I mean, that was a big deal after his passing, and I had seen it way back, I think years ago, I believe.
Yeah. And it's out there. Everybody else had a video as well. There were 2 or 3 people taking it. So what went out there originally was probably the one I took, but not necessarily the one I took. But I know I've seen it. If you look at it, there's like just just little differences of the angles. So. Obviously, it was the people on either side of me because he was talking to me, but there was other people there that obviously were interested in what he was saying. And because anytime you're around people, they're, in today's world, everybody's taking videos.
Right. Especially Edward Van Halen on his arguably one of his biggest nights. Like you said, he has this. It seems like from all the people I know that have been to 5150, like yourself, he does have a thing where he likes. get you not to be a fanboy. He's more comfortable.
He's got 20,000 of those when he's at the Hollywood Bowl. He hadn't needed it at his house.
Right. So he's comfortable at home, and he wants to be able to just be normal.
Yeah, make music. I honestly, God, I remember him doing an interview, I think, with Kurt Loder, and he said something about, I never wanted to be a rock and roll star. I want to be a musician. I want to play music. If you think riding around in the back of a limousine, his head's bopping around, he goes, if you think that's being cool and being a rock star, have at it. That's not ever what I wanted to do. Never what I wanted to be.
Right.
And he went on the road. There's famous stories of him just hanging out, playing guitar, doing what he was doing in his room, playing guitar, So
yeah, he played all the time. Like you said, he came in there, he had a guitar. He never let a guitar out of his hand.
Yeah. It was on his neck the whole night. The whole night I was there. He was there.
Yeah, that's a dedicated guy. He always was, apparently, from the very beginning. From what everybody, himself and everybody else says, he spent a lot of time in that bedroom getting those chops together and getting ready to do what he ended up doing.
Yeah, exactly. And again, if you're a tennis player, you hit on a wall if there's nobody. If you're Eddie Van Halen, you play in your room if there's no crowd. It's just is what you do.
It's a 10,000 hours thing that they talk about, right? You probably in your sport, it's the same thing as I always say that about guitar. It's like an athlete. If I don't play that thing 3 to 4 days a week regular, I start to go backwards.
Right.
There's a diminishing returns, of course, when you go too much or whatever age you might be and all that. But you got to stay on it, otherwise you lose it. I mean, you really do.
Yeah,
that's amazing, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man, and talking about this experience at the Smithsonian. It was a very rare opportunity for a couple hundred people, and you were there, and I was there, and I was glad to be there.
Yeah, here's the guitar he gave.
Yeah, show that.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Again, it's unused. So I haven't played it since he played it. So
that's awesome.
Jeff, if you ever come up to New Jersey,
I'll play it.
I'd love to see somebody use it. It's great.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what song he recorded that on that. But I have a sneaking suspicion it was the Twister song, is what he said, because I am a huge. That was an awesome song. One of his heaviest songs later in his catalog with Sammy.
Right.
And I asked what my favorite song was, and I said, "Well, I mean, Jesus, pick one. I mean, Jesus, that's the one I like. Yeah, that one I like too. That was not bad. Sure, that's great." And I said something to the effect of, Twister was killer. I just love that song because it was so heavy, and unfortunately, it was the last song he did, but with Sam. But it was. I just love that song, and the video was great, and this and that. And he goes, "Yeah, it was a good jam." And he immediately went to this guitar and played riffs on it and stuff. So I'm thinking, and if I look at the video, it's very, very similar to that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the guitar, but I'm under the assumption that's why he picked that one versus a red one, or a black one or a green one or whatever that one.
He seemed to have a very his tech that he had up to the end. He gave him a guitar.
Matt Brook, that guy?
No, not Matt, but a guy named Tom Weber.
Oh yeah. I saw that interview with him
in the videos.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't. He had ordered that double neck for himself that Ed ended up using in '82, and then later found out that Ed took it, and they were never going to get it. So when he visited Ed gave him a Paul Dean guitar in the same color with the same.
Gotcha.
So he was kind of like making a gesture, like, you can't have my black and yellow, but you can have this black and yellow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, he had like a funny sense of humor like that. I mean, it seemed like he had a really smart, kind of cool sense of humor. I love that about him, man. That was really awesome. Anything else you want to say about the Smithsonian that you can think of? You said you didn't really have a favorite song.
No, I really don't. I mean, it depends. I love Summer Nights. That's a great one if you're driving in a convertible. The fact he played, the fact that Beat It, on my iPad or iPod or phone or whatever you want to call it, when Beat It comes on, it comes on, Beat It, Michael Jackson featuring Eddie Van Halen. I mean, I that's the way I named it, right? Because to me, it's a great song, and it wouldn't be that as cool if he wasn't on it. If CeCe DeVille was playing it, it wouldn't have been the same. It just wouldn't have been.
Sure.
So for me, him. The thing about Eddie, Van Halen that is so personal, and why people, I mean, any of my friends, you know, who does Vince like, or what are Vince's idols, or what's Vince's friends or people that he, you know, John McEnroe. These are the people that used to be on my wall when I was a kid growing up in a poster, right? Eddie Van Halen, I had him on my poster on my wall. Now, and then I got a chance to meet him and stuff. That was pretty cool. But the reason Eddie was so important to me was in '78, we had a radio station in St. Louis called KC95. It's still there, and Sammy Hagar's on it all the time, and he always references KC when he's in concert and stuff. In 1978, I'll never forget, my brother had a Craig stereo system in his room, and I went in, I put on a pair of headphones, and I was just listening to the music on KC because he had the cool loud radio, right? So I was in there, and I will never forget, the DJ came on and said, "Here's a new band from Los Angeles that's getting a lot of buzz. Check them out." And on came Eruption, and then that, which led right into the song. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what the hell is this? Because prior to that, I'm hearing, you know, Kansas music and violins, and I'm hearing my brother's Guess Who, and I'm hearing, you know, Boston, and all the things that were kind of out and about around that time. But when my brother had never heard the song, he was a big music guy. I said, you got to hear this band called Van Halen. So it was my find. It was my group. You know what I'm saying? I didn't listen to Journey. If I listen to Journey, it's because my brother listened to Journey. If I listen to Jim Croce, it's because my brother listened to Jim Croce. If I listen to Fleetwood Mac, it's because my brother listened to Fleetwood Mac. This was my band. This was who I found. Right. And because of that, I mean, and it could have been a passing fad. It could have been, you know, Enough's Enough was the band I heard that day, but it wasn't. This had staying power, and this was different. And he was arguably for the time amazing. And over time, he became more amazing and more respected, and validated my belief that this guy was something special, you know? And then I'm 10 years old with that idea that this is my band. I'm 52. This is still my band, and this is still my guy. And this is still my find. You know, my kids laugh because I don't listen to new music. I don't know what their music is. You know, my wife laughs, and my wife laughs because she listens to her music. But when Van Halen comes on, everybody goes, "That's Dad's," and it's true. You know, and that's true. That's my guy, and that's my band.
That's amazing. That's amazing how many people that's the case. You know, we're all like that, right?
Yeah, everybody's got a first band that they really liked. Mine just happened to be the greatest in the world.
Right, you know? On, man. Yeah, and then you got to hang out with the dude. That's yeah. You know,
and that's how cool my life has given me such great blessings, because people that were on my wall as a kid on my posters now are on my Rolodex or on my iPhone or whatever you want to call it. You know, I mean, that's the cool part of what I've been able to experience in my life. You know, the people that I idolized as kids or thought were cool as kids have become people that I've got to meet and say, yeah, I was right to think he was a cool guy. You know, I was right to think this guy was pretty sweet.
Right. And I think we all looked at Eddie's smile on all those pictures and all that stuff, you know, over the years when we were younger, looking at him going, this guy just seems like he's a really cool guy. Right. I mean, yeah. And he turned out it
turned out like that. Exactly. I don't have many personal pictures of me and famous people. Mm-hmm. Being in a world where, you know, you can be around famous people or people that are deemed to be important or famous. You kind of realize fanboy doesn't get you far, you know, and you kind of have to respect their space and place, especially in sports. That's what I know. I don't know music like you do. Right. But you kind of realize sometimes the more you hang back, the better you're going to be in the end of the interaction. Right. And it was absolutely the case here. But my point of saying that is I don't have a lot of pictures of me with famous people that I've met or been around or spent time with or whatever. But and it's the only picture that I ever blew up and actually have in my office, and it's me and Edward on that night at the Smithsonian, actually. Yeah, because it meant that much to me to actually be there that night with him, for him, because of him, and it meant the world to me. It really did.
That's exactly how I feel, man. It's an amazing thing. I think there's, you know, a lot of people in the video that were, asking questions at the end. That's the first thing they said. They just wanted to thank him for everything he's done and relay that to him. And And it was a good opportunity, better opportunity than most that you get to do, like whenever they're doing a signing or, it was more personal, very great.
Yeah, it wasn't like I said, it wasn't stare. It wasn't like next, serve number 52. It wasn't like that.
Right. Yeah.
It was a great night.
It's a great night, man. Well, I appreciate you getting on here and talking about it and going through that with me, man, and reliving it a little bit, because it stayed with me for the whole time, and if I'd have known, in 15 that he'd be gone now, I never figured that was going to happen.
Right.
See, I mean, we all knew he had problems with cancer and all that, but I guess none of us thought in 15,
Not even a thought.
Right. That he even, one of the most ironic things that I read recently about him and his father and his mother was that he said that he liked the way his father lived. He lived his life. He really wanted to live his life. And then his mother didn't. She was more conservative, I guess. So she didn't really do. She was more a homemaker. I don't think that she did all the things that he thought she might have wanted to do, I guess.
Yeah.
And she lived to be in her 80s, I believe. And his father lived to be 66. And ironically, he said that he wanted to split the middle between his mother and father. And he didn't quite split the middle, but the dude did some things in his life that 10 men haven't ever done, right?
Well, like I said, I've tried and I can't play.
Amazing stuff, man. Well, thanks for hanging out with me, man.
Awesome to see you again.
One thing I want to finish up with, and this was your comment to me in the email, was that this was probably Ed's greatest night, the Smithsonian that we were all at. Reflect on that. One thing I want to ask you, though, before we get into it, is the ceremony before. Now, when I went as a fan, right, so I got a ticket, and it was free to get in. When I got there, we got in line, and I was close to the front of the line. When they opened the doors, we walked in as fans. There was already half the place was full. And I was like, wow, what was going on in here before I got in here? So you guys were in there. Tell me what was going on. What they were presenting these.
Yeah, we actually, there was actually on the other side of the hall, you go in that big grand entryway hall when you go into the Smithsonian there. Yeah. And I think they had, I don't remember if the Batmobile was there or not. It's like they had the Batmobile from one of the more recent movies. Mm-hmm. Maybe it wasn't there at the time. I can't remember, but it was on the other side. They had like this kind of like almost like I'd say conference room type of thing, much smaller, intimate room. And they did this kind of press presentation. So there was a handful of us there, and it was, of course, Alex and his son and Matt Bruck and Janie, and close friends and press. Were there, and that's kind of when they did the formal presentation of both the Frankenstein black and white replica and one of Ed's stealth guitars to the museum, along with a half stack, an EVH half stack, and they had a formal presentation there. We took pictures. I'm seeing you've all seen the pictures. I have pictures. I was going to send them, but they're like the same as all the other ones that are out there. Sure. Where Ed's got his hand on the Frankenstein, he's got the gray jacket on, so that was in that room. Then, of course, we were allowed to go sneak over, like you said, and of course, Alex and all of them took up the front row, but it was like, it was basically the press and everybody got to fill in there before you guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's a picture of you guys that was taken that you're sitting behind Alex and his son, and Brad and you guys.
I've downloaded that. I've got that there. It's like, there I am.
There you are. Yeah. So we were like, wow. First thing I thought is, wow, and there must not have been that many fans allowed to come, to this, because when I got the ticket, I had no idea what kind of size we're talking about here. So it must have been a couple hundred fans, maybe. And the 200 other people, maybe?
Well, again, you have to understand this was a very important moment in Ed's life.
Sure.
We talked earlier about him being an immigrant and coming to America and then being honored by this country, for his achievements and his creativity. I mean, it was everything that Ed loved, right? They were celebrating him not for his, for any outrageous behavior or fights with Sammy Hagar or David Lee Roth, right? They were saying, you have contributed in a very substantial way to American culture through your music and your guitar playing. And so obviously Ed was going to have his family there, and he was, wanted press coverage, because he cared about that more than just about anything. I mean, it was a deeply moving evening for him.
Yeah, and I was grateful that I got a ticket. I mean, getting there and realizing how important it was to him, and how big of an event this was. Post even now, I'm still wow, I really was fortunate to be there.
And he was on that day. I mean, he was.
Oh yeah. I want to add too that Brad was supposed to be the host. He was supposed to be the one up on stage there, and that we collectively came up with questions. And I don't want to burst Kevin Dodd's bubble, but Brad came up with the question about the Gill movement being a possible inspiration for the stripe design. I think it's, great minds think alike. So Kevin, you came up with the question too, but Brad also was on the same wavelength, and we had provided a bunch of questions to Ed in advance. But I want to give Brad credit for that because, he played a big part in that event behind the scenes that most people aren't aware of.
Right. And it was a beautiful event. And then, we got to meet him at the end of that event, and which wasn't discussed to us, as fans, but I had a good idea that it might be small enough that he might do that. And then it was a very, you mentioned this earlier, Brad, how he liked to interact. It was much more personal in the way that it was like a receiving line where you got to walk up to him, take a picture, and it was more as intimate as it could be for that situation.
Yeah.
I thought they did great with that, how they handled it.
Yeah. We didn't get to talk with Ed. Of course, we had to catch a train back up to New York, which ended up breaking down.
Oh,
and
Lord.
I didn't get home until 3:30 in the morning. So it's like we might as well stayed and talk to Ed after all and just come back the next morning or something, because that was just an ordeal.
Yeah, it was a beautiful.
It's hard though. You realize that there's, like Chris and I have had so many opportunities to speak to Ed.
Exactly.
And, we were sort of like, well, let all these other people who who have never had the opportunity to meet Ed, have their time with him rather than us trying to.
Yeah, we've had our moments with him. It was definitely like we don't need to let these people have their time. Let them have more time.
Well, you guys heard this in the questions at the end. So many people just thanked him for the what he did, and that's really like me and a lot of those people, most everybody, just wanted to say thanks to him for all that he did for us. I mean, it inspired an entire career for me, and I'm a full-time musician because of him, which gave me an ultimate amount of freedom to do exactly what I want to do with my life. That's a big deal to me. That's a huge thing for me. And it was
me too. And that was an important point that I made in the tribute, that I wrote to him in Guitar World. That this industry came up behind him. They came up in his wake. I personally, was affected by that and my life path. He set me on that path. I was interested in music before, and but it kind of made me more determined to do that. Sure. My friend Robert, who's the other guy who heard Eruption, and we both were in a battle to see who could learn it first. He's an illustrator, but he's done album covers for Steve Vai. He did backdrop stuff for David Lee Roth. We went from these kids listening to this stuff to actually working with these people.